Welcome to Lesson 3 of the FastAPI Foundations series. This is where your endpoints stop being polite suggestions and start enforcing real contracts. In Lesson 2, we returned plain dictionaries. Today we make them typed. With Pydantic, a simple class like item with a name string and a price float becomes the contract. Bad input never reaches your handler, and you get a 422 with field-level errors for free. Here's the map for the next 20 minutes. 4 reflexes. Define a base model, so type hints become your contract. Add field constraints, so value rules live with the model instead of scattered across handlers. Compose nested models, so an order holding items holding money validates as one tree. And finally, separate your input, output, and update shapes. Item create, item read, item update. Because that's the pattern that scales once your API grows past toy size. So let's start with Reflex 1. Subclass base model. Annotate your fields, and you're done. That class is now your contract. Here, item declares a required name and price, plus an optional in-stock that defaults to true. Then you type hint the parameter as item on your root, and FastAPI does 4 things for free. Parses the incoming JSON, validates the types, returns a 422 if anything's off, and publishes the schema to docs. 1 reflex, 4 wins. But types alone are a leaky contract. A float happily accepts -999 as a price, and a plain string will gladly hold not an email. So we tighten the contract with field constraints and specialized types. Annotated with field GT0 for a positive number, GE and LT to bound an age, max length to cap a list, and email star for real format validation. Use GT, GE, LT, L for numbers, min length and max length for strings and lists, pattern for rejects, plus ready-made types like h2perl, UUID4, or positive int. The point? These rules live inside the model, so you've got one source of truth, and your docs UI gets richer for free. Here's what those constraints actually buy you at runtime. Send a post with a broken email, a 1-character name, and a negative age. And FastAPI never calls create user. You get back a 422 with a detail array that pinpoints every failure. The field location, a human-readable message, and a machine-readable type. 3 problems, 3 entries in 1 response. Your handler only ever runs on data that already satisfies the model. And here's where it gets powerful. A fields type can itself be another base model. Money lives inside line item lives inside order, and validation cascades all the way down. Fix a rule on the deepest field, like requiring a positive amount or a 3-letter currency code, and the entire tree enforces it automatically. This is OOP composition applied to JSON, and it's exactly the shape the capstone cart will take. Now, once your models start describing real endpoints, you hit a fork. The shape a client sends on post is not the shape your server returns on get. The client never sets the ID or the created JAWT timestamp. Those come from the database. So the senior pattern is 3 models per resource, an item base for shared fields, an item create for input, and an item read for output, plus an item update where everything is optional for patch. Wire it up with response, model by item read, and your input and output contracts are cleanly decoupled. No leaked fields, no accidental writes to server-owned data. With the basics locked in, here are 6 reflexes that separate prototype models from production code. Use annotated with field for clean separation of type and constraints. Reach for literal when you've got a fixed set of strings. It's lighter than a full enum and renders as a drop-down in docs. Add field validator for rules Python can express, but type hints can't. Lean on email str, HTTP URL, and UUID4 instead of writing rejects. Tune behavior per model with config dict. Strict, forbid extras. Frozen. And when it's time to hand off to the database, model dump gives you a clean dict, with mode BaseModel for JSON safe types. Keep this slide handy. It's 12 patterns covering pretty much everything you'll write day to day. Top row is the contract itself. Subclass BaseModel, declare required fields, give defaults where it makes sense. Middle rows are your validation toolkit. Optional fields, numeric ranges, string lengths, rejects, specialized types, and literal for enum-like choices. And the bottom row is the boundary. Containers for nested shapes, model dump to leave Pydantic land, and model validate to enter it. Screenshot this one. Now, 5 mistakes I catch constantly in code review. 1. A single item class for input, output, and database. Split it into 3. 2. Mutable defaults, like equals empty list. Use default factory instead. 3. Type-only validation, where price float happily accepts -1,000. Add field constraints. 4. Forgetting response, model, which leaks hashed passwords straight to the client. And 5. calling.ict. In V2 code, it's model dump now. Internalize these and your reviews get a lot quieter. Time to put this into your hands. 3 exercises in order. First, a user model with real constraints. Email stir, length bounds, age range, and confirm bad input comes back as a 422 pointing at the exact field. Second, compose nested models, money inside line item inside order, and watch validation cascade down the tree. Third, the senior move, split user into user create, user read, and user update, wire response model, and prove the hashed password never leaks. Do these 3, and your next API ships with validation and docs for free. And that's foundations done. BaseModel, type-driven fields, constraints, nested composition, and the input versus output split. Those are the reflexes every endpoint you write from here on will lean on. Next up, Lesson 04 shifts into the daily track. Path and query parameters, item IDs in the URL, search strings, pagination, and annotated path types. URLs that actually mean something, backed by real data. See you there.